Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and I am nearing the end of Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. And while it's been a story of ups and downs, the one massive pro that's been constant throughout all of Dawntrail for me has been the actual fight design. And I think it's so good in Dawntrail that it deserves its own video. In the lead up to Dawntrail, many people will be familiar with the media tour coverage that many content creators out there did for the game. One of my favorite little pieces of content that came out of that was the Preach Gaming interview with Yoshi P. And inside that interview, Yoshi P talked about wanting to try new things with fights going into Dawntrail. If you make fights with essentially the same idea over and over and over again, eventually you'll just run out of ideas, or imagination and creativity and passion will just stagnate. Now, while the only fights I've done in Dawntrail are the dungeons and normal mode trials, the fights all still feel like Final Fantasy XIV fights, don't get me wrong, but I think one of the really underrated aspects to it all is the way that it's telegraphing information to you, the player. And the seeming pace or intensity is, at least on the average, going up compared to previous expansions. Fights just feel more creative and fun and inspired. Like, one boss turns into a giant snake bro, so he does this slithering mechanic, where at various points along him slithering around, which is painted on the floor, he'll do a conal AoE. So if you know how a snake slithers, you know which direction the cone is going to go into, and you can react accordingly. It's not a hard mechanic, and I wouldn't say that any of the mechanics I fought so far against in Dawntrail are particularly that hard, because again, they're just normal dungeons and normal trials. But they're fun to learn, and they're fun to just react against. There hasn't been a single boss where I've gone, well, that was okay, I guess. I'm like, oh, that was really cool. Oh, that was really cool. That was really cool. Even in Trust dungeons, I've died quite a few times. And the visual spectacle of a few of these fights is something to behold. Like in the level 85 dungeon, the final boss there is this giant rock golem that's like punching boulders apart and sending the shrapnel at you. It's really cool. Does it have to be the most mechanically complex, in-depth thing of all time? No. But to me, I think it's readily becoming apparent, and it could just be a case of it being slightly different to what we have established or accustomed to in Final Fantasy XIV, but it feels as if they're asking a little bit more for the player, even in these one-on-one solo encounters. Remember at the end of Endwalker where you had that 1v1 at the very end? I thought that was really cool, and I wanted them to lean into that idea, and seemingly they have. There's a couple of examples within Dawntrail of them having these fights that happen in the main story quests, that happen outside of dungeons and trials, that have quite a few mechanics, and honestly, down the line, I would love to see them take some sort of inspiration and maybe buff these fights up a bit, add a few more mechanics on top, as just a bit of seasoning on top of a great meal, and make like 1v1 extremes. You don't have to do much with them, maybe throw in a nice piece of glamour or whatever. I would just love to fight these fights again. Heck, they advertised the one in Dawntrail in the cinematic with us going 1v1 against Galul Jar Jar, and I thought it was a really cool fight. Was it the hardest thing in the world? No. But instead of just making me play as another NPC and have about 3 or 4 buttons to press in total, I have my full rotation and can just go 1v1 as the Warrior of Light. I love that kind of stuff, especially for the MSQ. And you combine that with really good just design overall in the dungeons and trials, and I don't know what else to say. I'm just really happy with the state of Dawntrail mechanically. And I've heard only amazing things about the extreme trials. I haven't gotten to them yet because I'm still making my way through the MSQ, but I look forward to each new dungeon and each new trial because I'm like, what else could they throw at me? That second trial was a feast for the eyes. It was really cool. A bit mind-boggling, but yeah, once you became adjusted to it, it felt intense. And I think that's a really good wood for a lot of the fights I've had in Dawntrail. They've all felt intense one way or the other. Overlapping mechanics and just asking a bit of a faster reaction time from the player. I think that's one of the things I've been noticing. Not throughout every mechanic, but every now and then, I notice that the timing is a bit tight. Like, tighter than I would think for a leveling dungeon or whatever. And that's not a criticism for me. I think one of the best parts about Final Fantasy XIV overall, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think as you play through the MSQ, I'm talking about from back in A Realm Reborn all the way to the present, they're kind of teaching the player how to play, introducing new mechanics here and there, building you up, building up your job, building up your bank of pre-established Final Fantasy XIV knowledge when it comes to like a database of entries in terms of, okay, I recognize this type of marker, or this marker, or this marker, or that if it's gonna look something like this, even if I've never seen it before, I can kind of assume this is gonna be bad. And there's like this one mechanic in one of the fights, I think it's in the 87 dungeon, where you're fighting this motorcycle dude, and he summons a giant sword, and you can see the path he's gonna trace, and you have to judge the safe zone. That's a very Final Fantasy XIV mechanic, right? Danger zone, safe zone, go with the safe zone. Duh. But it's the way they are telegraphing the information that feels new, and it's little things like that that can go a long way when it comes to these fights. I always feel as if I have to pay attention and be actively engaged with what's going on, unless I'm fighting trash, in which case it's trash. We call trash trash for a reason. Or I'm doing Valgamonda and it transforms the arena into a snowy, like, mountainside and sends avalanches down. Again, a really easy mechanic, right? It's not hard and it's not complicated, but God is it cool. I love it, love it, love it when they actually transform the arena, the playing space we have for these trial fights, and they shift it and mold it, and they've been doing this more in recent years, and I love it every time they do it. It's so cool. Whether they do it in Leviathan back in Shadowbringers, or in the Alliance Raids of Endwalker, it's always a treat when they do it to me. Now, I will say I think I prefer the dungeons to the actual trials so far, but again, I've only done the normal trials for the first one and the second one. I haven't done the extremes, and from what I hear, the extremes are really cool. And because the fight design has been so fun for me throughout all of Dawntrail, I kind of want to do these extremes and just see what they're all about, you know? But I've been so pleasantly surprised by the dungeons, because normally you pretty much know what to expect out of a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon, right? They're not going to be that hard or anything, and they're not. But every now and then I do die. Probably honestly a bit more than every now and then, because I've been doing Trust, and it's kind of funny. The Trust, let's talk about this for a second. Have you done the Trusts for Dawntrail? Because they're hilarious. You see, the funny people over at Square Enix thought, hey, I got an idea. What if we made the character's personality come out during the fight? Now, you may be asking, what do I mean by this? So, you know, during the first half of Dawntrail, Ruko Amada is basically wildly incompetent? Yeah, so, don't follow her in dungeons. She eats a lot of AoEs. And this became one of my favorite things to do in the fights throughout Dawntrail, is just observe what the NPC trusts are doing. And the funny thing I realized in the second trial was I should just follow Y'shtola, the only character in the party that's canonically blind, because she actually does the mechanics better than everyone else, and it's funny as hell to me. Once I realized this, I'm like, that is the funniest crap I've seen all day. And during the mechanics, you know the one if you've done it, for the second trial, that's like kind of mind-melting. I'm like, alright, I'm not gonna think about this, I'm just gonna follow the cat girl. And you wanna know the funny thing? It worked. I saw like everyone else stand in at least one AoE. Y'shtola was on the money. She had like Ultra Instinct, she was dodging everything. And because I was pretty much right on top of her, like a backpack, I was dodging everything as well. It was so good. And it's little stories like that, you know, where even in something like a normal trial, I can have a memory like that. That's when I tend to find the great fights, or just good fight design, shine through. When you can have moments like that that you just remember. And I know Dawntrail can be a bit controversial because people's reaction to the MSQ will vary. And I've had that conversation up to a point with my impression series throughout Dawntrail, and I'm sure we'll have more as I wrap up the MSQ. But I wanted to take a minute just to shout out the fight design in Dawntrail, because it's been so fun, and it's been refreshing. I think I saw a Mr. Happy video entitled, "The fights in Dawntrail have been just refreshing," or something along those lines, and I couldn't agree more. I look forward to every fight, I look forward to every boss in every dungeon. Because while the mechanics themselves, when you boil them down, are pretty much just Final Fantasy XIV mechanics: safe zone, danger zone, get out of the danger zone, don't stand in things that are clearly going to kill you. Presentation goes a long way, and the fact they varied up just the pace of stuff It's not like Endwalker didn't do this. By the way, there's a couple of dungeons in Endwalker that had a similar pace, the 81 one being a standout for me. But it just feels as if all the dungeons are like that, and I love it. I love it when the content in this game challenges me, or makes me at least pay attention. And while, yeah, some fights have been better than others, I've been enjoying every fight. And you know what? I think that's important, because combat is a massive part of Final Fantasy XIV. So if the combat, even on the low end, can be fun and really engaging, you know what? It makes me super excited for the raid. Bring on the arcade, and I want to see what kind of fights they have in store for us. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. Leave a comment down below with what your favorite dungeon in Dawntrail has been so far. For me, it's a tough call, but I probably have to go with the 83 one because I just love the idea of climbing that mountain. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video or want to see more content. I'm going to be wrapping up the MSQ really soon, in which case you can expect my full review of the main story of Dawntrail soon after. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.